We will make a start.
I'm going to do that right now. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to our third session on day 2 of our PENS Power Up conference. Before we start, I'm just going to quickly draw your attention to our messages from PENS at the top of our chat there. Check out our vacancies page, which is accessible on the PENS website. We've also got the fortnightly newsletter that has all kinds of great information related to PE in New Zealand, so you can sign up for that at PENS. And we've also got board elections coming up, so start to have a think about whether or not you or you know someone who might be quite handy at the PENS governance level. I know that our new CEO is looking forward to really kickstarting all of that stuff again with a new twist, so get amongst it, and all of the details will be announced very shortly for that on the PENS website. So pens.org.nz, and you can find all the information there. As normal, if you have any questions, fire them up in the chat as we go. Heather and I will have a look at that, keep an eye on it as we go, and if need to, we will interrupt our speaker. If not, we'll direct you to those at the end of the session. So let's kickstart this. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michelle Johanssen, who is here to talk to us about what it will take to change the world for our young brown scholars. So I'll hand over to you, Michelle, and we can get straight into it.
Sweet. Kia kunui, kia kurahi, he honore, he kororia ki te atua, he maungarongo ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa, ka tuku ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa, ki te kupapa whakahirahira o tērā nei, nō reira tēnā koutou tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora ana, whakalofa lahi atu, tā aloha ni, bola vinaka, mā loe lelei, whakalofa lahi atu, and tā alofa lava. The warmest of Pacific greetings to you, wherever you are across Aotearoa. My name is Michelle Johanssen. There's a little bit about me to follow, but firstly, teachers, man, congratulations for surviving the longest term in the history of the universe. What I'm going to talk to you today about has been prompted, or some of the research has been prompted by our COVID crisis, and by navigating new waters in that COVID environment, and what it means. Really, the focus is on young brown scholars, but particularly on crisis and agency, and how we might take agency to change the world for our young Māori and Pasifika scholars. More about that soon. So welcome to the session. Thank you for giving up your time. If you're viewing this online later on, that's awesome too. I was saying to Jules and Heather earlier that I always think the right people end up hearing the right thing. So to those right people amongst you, welcome, no mai haere mai. My heritage is Tongan Danish, so this is kind of my pepeha slide. So no pairata hau, ko puitati maunga, ko waikato te awa, ko te puhi o pairata te waka, ko Desmond Norman Dickon, toku papa, Ngati Pākehā ia, ko Ilaisane Eniketi Makalave, toku mama no tonga tapu ia no whatai kainga ia. Ko Jeff Takutane, ko Eunice Rawa, ko Tisimoni Takutamariki, ko Michelle Takuingoa. So on the left-hand slide there is my mother. She is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but she is 1 second from the right in her beautiful Queen Salote uniform. So my mum is she's number 7 of 15 children raised in a small village called Whatai in Tonga, on the main island of Tongatapu. She, I say when I get to speak in these spaces that she worked her whole life on a factory floor so that I can sit here and have this kōrero with you today. And she was one of those brave adventurers from the Pacific who came here in the labour shortage in the 1970s to build a new life for herself and for her family. She's one of the giants on whose shoulders I stand. Came with nothing but the suitcase in her hand, no land, no language. I don't know if any of you have ever landed at the airport in Tonga, but you get there and you get off the plane and you know 1,500 people who are anybody who's at the airport, you know them. Some of them are your cousins, some of them are your neighbours, but one of them will look after you and take you to take you to their house, feed you, and see what you need next. For my mum coming here in the 1970s, she didn't know anything or anybody, and she landed at Auckland Airport, and it was a very different world. So for my mum, who has walked in those two worlds her whole time so that I can do these things, I have immense gratitude and thankfulness. And the top photo there with the 4 women, that is 4 generations of women in my family. My grandmother raised those 15 children in a single room with no power, no running water, and is one of my giants as well. I am a teenage mum, so the top right-hand photo there is me and my daughter. I had her in week 3 of university, was pregnant through most of my then 7th form year. When she got to university, she started in health science, and they told her all of the stats about the children of teenage mothers and how they were least likely to succeed. If you've seen the disadvantage index, you'll know that one of the 6 factors of success in our education system is the age of your mother at your birth. Other factors that upset me on that scale are ethnicity as a disadvantage. I just don't think that we can continue to live in an Aotearoa where you're disadvantaged by being Māori or by being Pacific or having Polynesian cultural capital. And this is part of the impetus for what I do. You'll see in the bottom slide there, that is my whānau, and my daughter and I were able to graduate together a couple of years ago. So she graduated with her first degree, and I got to come through with my doctorate, which was amazing. For us, whānau is everything, the whānau that you are born with, the blood that you were born into, but also the whānau that you choose for yourselves. So for me, there are 2 big families that bring me to the space today and that influence the work and that hold our young brown scholars at the heart of what they do. The first of those is the Blackfriars Theatre Company. So Blackfriars has been in existence since 2006, when we suggested to an organisation that we might like to do a Polynesian version of Shakespeare's Othello, at which point we were asked the question, do you think we'll be able to find enough Polynesians who can do Shakespeare? Which was one of the turning points in my life, where these beautiful young men from Wesley College said to me, you know what, F them, let's do it anyway. And thus this theatre company was born. We've worked in South Auckland for the last 13, 14 years to help or to create spaces where young people can tell the stories of their hood. We know that we know the strengths of South Auckland. We know how much power there is in the people of South Auckland, and part of our job is to bring those young people together to help them to tell the stories that matter to them. Where South Auckland is an amazing place to live and full of people who want to make a difference. And we've been working in the last 3 years on a project called Southside Rise, which intends to grow young leaders for South Auckland. We realised that there was not enough representation at board tables and decision-making tables to represent our people adequately. And we sort of thought about where we're going to get them from, and then we decided, as we do in many cases, that we've just got to grow our own. So we opened our doors 3 years ago to 4 schools in South Auckland. And then pretty soon we had 14 out of the 17 low decile schools in South Auckland on board our waka. We had 153 kids on stage. We had 3 audiences with our Prime Minister. There's a whole bunch of numbers behind that, but that project, Southside Rise, has had 3 iterations, but is still in the early days of the potential for the change it might make in Aotearoa. The second whānau that brings me to the space today is Ako Mātātupu, Teach First NZ. So Ako Mātātupu was set up in 2012. The vision for it is that all young people in Aotearoa will realise their full potential. For us, that means turning the tables on that story of Aotearoa's long brown tail of underachievement. Too often we hear that our young people are at risk, that our young people are the ones making trouble, when actually what we know is that Māori and Pasifika young people are warriors, leaders, scholars, orators, but our education system is the thing that's broken. one of the things that one of my mantras, one of my whakatauki, one of my words to live by is that we've got to stop trying to fix our kids, because our kids are not what's broken. We have a very broken system that does not serve them, and it's on all of us to make some of those changes. So all of this whānau, all of these giants on whose shoulders I stand feed into the work, into the talk today. So kia ora. There are two parts to this really, and the first part is about crisis and the second part is about agency. For anyone who's tuned into our ako whono with ako matatupu on a Wednesday night, these statistics and things will be very familiar to you. However, when COVID hit our shores, it prompted us, all of these whānau that I work with, to look at what it means to be in crisis. So the simple definitions of crisis are there for you on the left. Crisis is a time of intense difficulty or danger, a time when a difficult or important decision must be made, the turning point of a disease when an important change takes place, indicating either recovery or death. When we looked this up and we thought about COVID, we thought about the fact that, yes, this is a big crisis. It's a worldwide pandemic. We really salute, appreciate, have massive gratitude to our country's leadership for guiding us through these dangerous and hazardous times and helping us navigate those borders. However, there must be an acknowledgement that Aotearoa, peoples in Aotearoa have been in crisis for a long time before COVID hit our shores. And we've done little to unite as a nation to address some of those crises. So the next few slides are some of the statistics that exist in Aotearoa and that kind of give the numbers story to what it means to be in crisis. So this is kind of the space in which I sit. So I get to work in the spaces where education, equity and the performing arts meet for young brown scholars, with young brown scholars at the heart of that work. Our education system is 4 times more likely to fail a child from a low socioeconomic community. And by 2026, 1 in 5 babies born in Aotearoa will be of Pasifika heritage. These stats combined mean that we have a rising population of young people coming through our schools, of Māori and Pasifika young people who are coming through our schools, that our schools are not equipped to serve, that our schools do not have the cultural capital to even understand the needs of. There is like a prevailing myth in Aotearoa that's been exacerbated by the systems, that being poor equals being brown, and being brown equals being dumb, and being poor equals being dumb, when these are not the cases. This is not the case at all. When we look at principals in our high decile schools who have recently received a bunch of modems, and there's evidence of one principal saying that this was a crisis, this was an absolute disaster. I think we really need to look at ourselves and think about what disaster actually is, and how the COVID crisis has meant that so many of our young people have just been disengaged from school for essentially a quarter of their educational journey for the year, and how we come back to that. Anne Milne has talked about the fact that we have been praying for an opportunity for our education system to be interrupted for a long time now, and we had it. And my greatest fear is that we've missed it. Now, I think that during the crisis, we plunged into this time where we thought about hauora, we thought about caring for our young people. But the stories from my teachers, 112 teachers up and down the country, the story that we are hearing back is that, yes, we stopped, we thought about well-being, we checked in with our families and our students, we wanted to know if they were okay in the first instance. They came back to school, we continued to check on their hauora. But now we've got to get those NCEA assessments done. So how do we navigate that space between, are you okay, are you actually okay, to the demands of the curriculum in NCEA. So we'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit. The statistics, however, for us, for those who want the facts behind the story, our suicide rates are astronomically high, particularly for Māori. So we lost 685 people to suicide in the last year. Perhaps not more alarming, but another thing that we need to be alarmed about is that not only did we have those 685 deaths, but we also had 7,000 incidents of self-harm that required hospitalization. So and this is only the people who will ask for help. This is the critical point. So much before that, how much pain were those 7,000 people in? How much pain were those 685 people in before that last drastic step took them from us? And then how do we address this for Māori, which is the red bar expressed here? If we're not serving our Indigenous people, then what are we doing as a country? And we can look at that from all angles, from moral obligations through to the responsibility that's indicated in the treaty partnership, to just this is what is tika, this is what is right. We must serve our Māori, our tangata whenua first. And if our education system is not doing that, then we have the wrong education system and change needs to be made. So these are our suicide statistics. The next set here, there was a lot of talk about crowded housing during the COVID crisis, and we in South Auckland are sitting there thinking, well, 4 in 10, 40% of Pacific people live in a crowded house. There are 9 people living in my house across 3 generations. The thought was that as soon as it hits community transmission in South Auckland, then it's all over, because we live together, and that's our strength, not our weakness, that we live in village situations. I will say that our houses are not built for us. I know I might return to that a little bit later. But 40% of Pacific people live in crowded homes. Only 65% of Pacific people have access to the internet in their home, regardless of what your students tell you. There's a lot of shame about expressing this in schools, I think. So if you ask a kid, do you have internet? Of course they're going to say yes. Do you have a device at your house? Of course they're going to say yes. But the truth of it is 65% of our Pacific homes have the internet. And that's not even taking into consideration the fact that there's a difference between trying to write an essay on your smartphone and trying to do it on your Mac, while you're sitting at your dining room table with your 20 siblings sitting around you. And we'll come back to that later. But that is our crowded housing situation. This is our acute and chronic diseases situation. This table is probably the hardest one to read, but by summary, I think the life expectancy thing is a good thing to look at. So there's a 5-year difference basically between the total population and the Pacific population. The statistic between someone living in Mangere and someone living in Remuera rounds up at about a 17-year difference in life expectancy between those 2 locations, to do with poverty, to do with all of these situations that play in. That's a whole person, that's a whole teenager, and this is not good enough. This is indicative of the wider crisis that we are facing. This chart indicates homelessness. So there's 40,000 across Aotearoa, and these are the people who will allow themselves to be counted. There's a lot of suspicion amongst our rough sleepers, a lot of suspicion amongst us generally when completing government surveys and whatnot. So this is only the 40,000 and then 20,000 for Auckland who allow themselves to be counted in census data. So this is census data, but it doesn't include everybody. So if we consider maybe 1 in 2 people will fill out one of those surveys, it's probably quite generous as well. That's 20,000 people who are rough sleeping in Auckland today. For child poverty, we've been aware of this. Our government has brought attention to this, but it's not improved substantially over the time. It's not a full stop. So 1 in 2 children in South Auckland still live in poverty. That doesn't look like it's going to change. If we think about that as contributing to the crowded housing situation, to the chronic diseases situation, this is part of our country's obligation, part of our country's responsibility to look after its youngest and most vulnerable. This is our prison population. So you'll find a little bit later as well that for Māori, for our indigenous people, it's a game of doubles and halves. So if it's a positive statistic, we're likely to have half the number of Māori represented in that positive statistic. And if it's negative, we're likely to have half. So this is a case of doubles. For Māori, the population is 51% our prison population. And then if we add to that the fact that most people in prison are in prison because they're poor, not because they're particularly inherently evil. It's been because the circumstances of their life, the cycle, things are not working for them. The systems are not working for them. This is our unemployment rate. So again, you'll see double the number of Māori and Pacific people are unemployed to the rest of our population. And when we look at achievement, at UE attainment, so this indicates opportunities for further study, regardless of, I don't think university is the answer for everybody. I don't think anybody does. But in terms of having those doors open and opportunities for the future, then we have again that almost half of Māori and Pacific people will be eligible for those choices as they make their way through our schools and through their lives. So these are the statistics for Pacific people. We have children living in poverty, children living in crowded housing, which leads to the health problems, mental health as well, in moving across to education. So if you have poor housing, then you're less likely to have a constant health provider. If you have poor health, then you're less likely to have good education, good opportunities in education. And if you have poor education opportunities, then you are less likely to get a job that gives you job satisfaction, and then it comes around full cycle again. So 13 or close to 14,000 Pasifika people's unemployed. And then we also have to take into account that 80,000 Pacific peoples are in low skilled occupations. So these are jobs that this is the roof of their income. For Pacific peoples, we are 33% below the median average for income and employment. And what that results in is this number in the middle, in that of our 381,000 Pacific peoples living in Aotearoa, there are 243,000 cases of people living in crisis. For then statistics for Māori, so this is the Māori average annual income, our children living in poverty, our children living in crowded housing and rough sleeping, which leads to these health problems, 1,900 cases of chronic health problems. Our suicide rate here, which is so Māori represent almost a quarter of the people in our suicide rate. And that comes across to education, so half the opportunities of Pākehā, and stand down rate is double that of Pākehā. Then we have the unemployment rate with 59,000 Māori unemployed. That's only the people who will be counted. We have to take into account that with Māori and Pacific people, there will be a significant number of those young women, I think of particularly, who are at home in the role of caring, so caring for their children, for their siblings' children, for children in their whānau or their whanaunga, but also the older people. So for our young women, we stay home. We don't often apply for those benefits, so we won't be recorded as unemployed, but they do exist and they do contribute hugely to their family and their iwi. And then 5,000 incarcerated. And this leads us to the total in the middle there. So of our Indigenous population, which is around about, these figures are rough, around about 745,000, we have close to 340,000 cases in crisis. So when we come back to this idea of crisis, this time of intense difficulty or danger, we can see that for generations, our Māori and Pacific people have been living in crisis and been living with that crisis. What I want to point out here is not to criticise our government, because our government has done the right thing, but we reacted enormously when this particular group, we had 1,000 Pākehā people who were affected by this crisis. That was the moment when we decided to unite as a nation and turn things around and show what was possible. So with the $12 billion economic stimulus package that was injected into the economy, so we had these resources and we had just not chosen to use them. And I realise that that's complicated and it's much more complex than I'm letting on. But the fact is we have had an enormous number of people in crisis and we've done nothing about it. School looks the same as it did in 1933, essentially. And the speed at which we reacted. So we had 3 cases, 18 days and $12 billion. 28 cases, which was 20 days in, we closed our borders with 283 cases at 27 days. Our whole country went into lockdown. That's at 283 cases. What we're talking about is this number, 1 million people living in crisis, already living in crisis, which makes you wonder which people count when we're talking about crisis, which people, whose health will we react to? What will we do when there's a threat and to who? And for us as educators, this is the cycle that we're working with, right? This is one rendition of the poverty cycle. And this circle here, the pink circle, that is where we as educators have an opportunity to interrupt that cycle. So this income, housing, health, and education and employment, like we can't possibly affect housing, we can't possibly affect health, but as a group of educators, we should be able to make a significant impact on education. And if enough voices are raised in this area, then there will have to be change. There will have to be that revolution that has been long needed. I'm also not saying that the system works for all Pākehā either, but it is a system, a very colonial system that was designed a long time ago that we're still determined to live into. We still think that maths can be taught between this bell, and then they'll stop learning maths and they'll go and learn something else. Our system is in big need of an overhaul. Which brings me to the second part. I'm happy to take any questions or to be interrupted at any point, or challenges are fun too. So please do, and I trust that the ladies will interrupt me if there's anything significant. So I will move on to the second part, which is hopefully more hopeful. So this is agency. So we talk about crisis and agency a lot in our work. It's it's very easy to sit there and look at the crisis that happens and think, oh, well, I can't do anything about that. There's nothing in my power. But I think that as teachers, as educators, there's so much in our power, even if it's those 10 kids who are listening to you on a Friday afternoon, last period, and you're tired and everyone's tired, but there's still the immense capacity to influence the way that our young people see the world and see themselves in the world. So there are some circles there about agency and how it works, and we are particularly interested in this bottom one, this control circle, things that I have in my direct power to do, what I can do to change the world, and what I can do to change the world for our young brown scholars. So I have 10 pieces here. So I generally do this in poetic form, but it doesn't work so well on the internet, so I'm just going to story through it. So here we go. The first thing is that we are the cavalry. No one is coming to save us. There is not going to be some enormous government intervention that means that suddenly all our Māori and Pasifika people are being well served in our schools. It is on all of us to be the cavalry. It is on all of us to make those changes. I have the privilege of working with teachers who are just beginning their journey. When they go into schools, they are essentially untrained, and they experience our education system in quite a traumatic way at first, and then they have joined our vision because they believe in the vision for a better Aotearoa and in social justice and equity. But often they find that there are barriers that they didn't anticipate, and that they think about their own powerlessness in the classroom and in the school. What we say is that every interaction with every child in our classes and our classrooms matters. Children in our school system spend 12,000 hours in compulsory schooling. For some of our kids, that means that for 12,000 hours, they are taught that being brown is the same as being dumb. that being brown is the same as being poor, and being poor is the same as being dumb. So every time we have a counter narrative to that. Every time we say to a kid, you can do it, with all the sincerity and belief that that child needs and that we should feel, we are making a difference. We are being that cavalry. So no one is too small to make a difference. Every single small thing counts. The second thing is that, and this is no secret to anybody, I think, particularly those who work in health, PE, drama, dance, the people who have sort of physical contact. I don't know how to express that, but that relationship is everything. That relationship that you have with that kid, when you tell that kid that you believe in them, or you just show that through some way, it is absolutely everything. And these are sort of 4 of our wonderful teachers in South Auckland, working in De La Salle, Southern Cross, and Māori College, who just every day go to school and believe in their kids. During the COVID crisis, when it was the time to just check in, thank you, Tanya. We just check in with each other, check in with our kids, check in that they're okay. That was the most important thing to do with COVID. That was the important thing to do, to check in, not to make sure that they'd filled out that worksheet on page 3 of the textbook, but that they were okay, or that their family were doing okay. So I wonder how we can maintain that now that we're back face to face. I feel like we went back to schools, we checked if they were okay, we checked in an ongoing way if they were okay, but how do we maintain that in the face of NCEA deadlines, in the face of our schools wanting to push our kids through? And then also in the bigger picture, like, it's not going to serve our level 3, our year 13 kids well if we push them through to NCEA and then their pathway is university, and they get to university and they don't have all the skills that they need to cope with university. So holding relationship and our young people at the heart of our work, the absolute heart, is what we need to do going forward, regardless of the pieces of paper that need to be filled out. The third thing is to never underestimate the power of the village. So for us, in our work, both at Ako Mātātupu and the Black Friars, we understand that every child comes with a village behind them. Every child, it's very easy, I think, in a classroom when you've got a group of year 10 kids who are just being unruly in that last period of the day. It's very easy to see them as like the naughty kid or the kid who's being trouble. But that kid has come with all of their whānau. Just as I said at the beginning, like my mum worked for 35 years on a factory floor for me to sit in the classroom. For our kids, that is still very much the case. Their parents, their family have worked. They are standing on the shoulders of giants. They will ask for help in very different ways. The kid, one of our teachers who teaches at Aotearoa talked about how the kid who puts up his hand and said, "Sir, can I have some help on this? I don't understand what I'm doing." We're always like, "Yes, I can help you. I can help you." But when the kid asks for help in a different way, such as wagging or being belligerent or refusing to do a thing, that is still a kid asking for help. And so we need to see it. We need to be able to see that and to navigate that space as well, and to understand that we are better together. And I think we know this. So it's returning to those values as well. I'm sharing this a little bit out of turn. So this is about the act of co-conspiracy in our country. I think that there is still a lot of saviorism. There's still a lot of people who want to go in and save the world. Certainly in the teaching profession, there's a lot of people who see perhaps the movie Freedom Riders and think that they can go in and make a change like this. They can go and like sort of gift their knowledges and their skills to those poorer communities, poorer in the economic sense, and save the world that way. That is a narrative that I think is very dangerous and that we need to be well rid of. The second column there refers to allies, where it's very easy to say, "Oh yeah, I believe in that cause. I'm an ally." We need to empower these young people so that they can go on and do what they need to do. When that is a dangerous narrative as well. And then the last one is about co-conspiracy. I think the time has passed where we could say, you brown people do the brown people stuff, or you Māori do that stuff. We need to be actively engaged together in the partnership that is intended in Te Tiriti. Might not be how it's lived out, but the partnership that is intended in Te Tiriti is about Māori and non-Māori, and how we can make that partnership work for the betterment of Aotearoa as a whole, and to see Aotearoa as a whole. So in its simplest terms, how I describe these is the saviour is the person who wants to change all the brown people. The ally is the person who wants to change all the white people. And the co-conspirator is the one who knows that the only person they can change is themselves, but in so doing that might change the world. And this is borrowed from Lakota tribe, Uglala tribe, from our Native Alliance, our Native American Alliance, up there in South Dakota. So this is part of what they're developing as their framework for working with teachers and working on reservation. So I'm sort of like half allowed to share it with you, but half not. So if you do want to take up this conversation, we can do so a bit later and sort of talk about how it might pan out. The fifth one is to understand the system. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of, there's been a lot of conflict and a lot of tension between our different racial groups, and that's been particularly exacerbated by the events of the last few years. I think of what our whānau in Christchurch have been through with the mosque tragedy, and also with the questionable, all the things that have happened around Black Lives Matter, and where we have placed our allegiances and where different people have chosen their battlefields in that area. I think it's important fundamentally for us in Aotearoa to understand the system that we're working with. I said before that I live in a house with 9 people in it. Houses in Aotearoa are indicative of the system. A house in Aotearoa is not built for my people. Houses are built generally 3 bedrooms, which will house mum, dad, 2 kids, the dog, a cat, 3 TVs, 2 cars. Like, it's a very, very much built for the idea of the colonial nuclear family. When we have 9 people in our house, it's very easy to understand that this house, this like symbol of home, the symbol of what it means to belong, in Aotearoa was not built for my people. Seatbelts were not built for my people. You get into your car next time and you put your seatbelt on, and you think of the fact that it was built for a middle-sized Pākehā male. You put that, so when next time you put that seatbelt on, I'm trying to leave this image in your head because it's one of the good ones. You put that seatbelt on and you don't think of like some of my mates who are like 120 kg, and that's on the light side of actually our theatre company. It was not built for those men to sit in those seats. It was not built. These cars were not built to transport my 9 people. If my 9 people want to go to any event, to the movies, to anything, we need to think about how many cars we're going to take, who's going to travel in which car. Cars were not built for us. A few years ago, my cousin's husband was tragically died in the Kaipara Bar tragedy, and some of you will know the event that I'm talking about. But one of the headlines at that time, he's a big Tongan man, one of the headlines at that time said, the men were too big for the life jackets. The men were too big for the life jackets. And when we think about where the blame is placed in that sentence, that is indicative of Aotearoa. That is indicative of our education system. These kids don't fit our system, therefore they are wrong. And we never sort of think about how we might redesign the system. So from houses to our cars, to our life jackets, to our classrooms. A classroom that is built like the one on the left there, which is just a traditional classroom in Aotearoa, where kids sit in square boxes and face the front, and the teacher transmit knowledge to them in that way. It's just not how we're built. And we look at the whalea on the right, where learning is engaged in tuakana taina styles. It's organic. It's wānanga i te pō, like it occurs at all different times of day, in the evening when it needs to happen, when the child is engaged. it is much more like a system that would work for Māori and Pasifika people, because it would take into account their heritage literacies and the ways in which they be in and with the world. I do understand that I am talking to PE teachers and that your classrooms will not look like this most of the time, but I think the sentiment is there. The way that our systems, our bells work are not conducive to Indigenous and Pacific people's learning styles. Number 6 is to understand our core. And our core, which we use all the time, we use our core, we use our core, and we use this word all the time, but we have to remember that it means that if they are not learning, then you are not teaching. And it is a very reciprocal process. If they're not taking on board the things that you are trying to transmit to them, then no learning is occurring. This grid here is what we thought about during COVID, but we wanted to take forward back into the classroom, because some of the things still stand. So I'm going to work my way from the device box over here. So device meaning tool, essentially the tools and the gear that kids need. Do they have a laptop or whatever it is that you need them to have? Does it work properly? Is it fast? Is it shared with anyone else? When I think about the 9 people in my house and how difficult it is to just find a space in which to work. Like if I'm sharing with my son and my other son this one laptop, because if you ask a kid, do you have a laptop? Yes, I have a laptop. However, I'm sharing it with 4 other people. It's really slow. It's got some viruses on it, and I have to kind of wait my turn to use that gear. Understanding the equity gap is not about understanding who has the internet and who has a laptop. Understanding the equity gap is understanding that these things are just tools, and that we need to understand how to use these tools, and our kids need to understand how to use these tools, and to understand the difference between that device, that phone, that kid, that poor kid is standing at McDonald's because McDonald's has the Wi-Fi speed that they need and is trying to write their essay 5 minutes before they need to submit it, and then it takes 5 hours to upload. The difference between that and the kid who can go home with their MacBook, mum makes them a snack, they sit at the dining room table, or they have a desk in their room. I have 9 people in my house. Ain't nobody got a desk in their room. And gets to sit there in that time and to do that essay. There's a massive difference between those situations, and I don't think we've got a sophisticated enough system to understand that. I'm going to shoot across to the right now to access to learning, because it ties in quite nicely. Do they have internet access? Is it community internet access? Is it fast? Is it reliable? Is it conditional on where they sit in the house? If they have to sit next to the modem, which is the case in my mum's house, so my daughter has to sit next to the modem if she wants to use it. If that's the case, then how equitable is that? How can they access the learning? How can they actually engage their brains in what you're trying to teach them? Have you armed them with the critical thinking skills and the curiosity being so key, to figure out what is being asked of them? Have you modeled it for them? Do they actually, like you've said, okay, you've got your computer, you've got your internet, and sent them home? Must be nice. Have you sat with them? Have we sat with them and really understood how this should work? I have always been against this flipped classroom idea, because for my people, modelling is the thing that works, and being kanohi ki te kanohi is the thing that works. These are the bits that are hardwired into our systems and our brains. These are the intrinsic part of who we are. So when we go home and we get, just watch this lecture by yourself and then apply that knowledge, that's in direct opposition to what Talanoa is. It's direct opposition to our cultural values. I would never send a Pākehā person home. I would never go and watch this video on Seva and then come back tomorrow and do this Seva for me. You just would never do that. So in many situations, we need to rethink, when do we need to be kanohi to kanohi? When can we be online? What is it fair and equitable to access in that way? I'll go down to environment now. So, and that, because it kind of relates to what I was saying about the dining room table and the desk in the room and sitting next to your modem. Do they have Goldilocks conditions? Is it just right? These kids are teenagers. They are trying to learn against all of the odds of their hormones, against everything that's going on in their world. Do they have they need the exact conditions to work right? They need everything to sync up. Otherwise, they're always going to be disadvantaged. They're always going to be disadvantaged in accessing the curriculum in the way that we are currently delivering it. And then those ideas about, we've been in their homes through COVID, we've been in our kids' homes, we've been with their whānau. Have we taken the time to meet them? Did we see mum walk by in the background and say, hey mum, how are you doing? I'm in your house now, I'm your kids' teacher, I'm your kaiako. Do you understand what the whānau expects of them? In our schools, which are all low decile schools, we've had so many kids in the senior school not return to school because during lockdown, they had to go and get jobs to support their families because their parents had lost their jobs. They had to go and become those essential workers. Have we understood that when we ask why the kids falling asleep in our class, when we ask why the kids like 20 minutes late to school? It's because they were working night shift for 12 hours. And that's not always the case. Sometimes teenagers are teenagers and they're just mucking around outside. That's fine too. Do we understand that? Do we understand the circumstances of this child's life? Do we have realistic expectations of them? Do they have the space in their home in which to work? Or do they have 6 younger siblings who are constantly prying for their attention? And sometimes it's easier to just get their brother to log in on Zoom and leave the computer in another room and leave their camera off, but their name's still showing, so they're still in class. And can we really call that engagement or learning? For schools who are requiring their kids to be online at 9 a.m, what is that about? Why would you do that? I understand routine. It's not normal. These are not normal circumstances, and we need to learn to navigate differently. Also, I don't think that bells work, so that's just me. And then engagement. Do they want to be there? Are you having the party that everybody wants to be at? Kids will vote with their feet. Do they want to be in your class? Have you made them feel like they belong? Some of our teachers have kids turn up to their class who aren't even in their class. And I think if you're a Māori teacher, or if you work on a marae or in a whare wānanga, you'll be used to kids coming in who aren't in the class, but they just want to be there. They just want to be in that space with you. And I imagine many of you will have similar experiences where the kid is wagging another class, but they're sitting in your class and you figure, oh, you're sitting in my class, so at least you're somewhere, at least someone knows where you are. And do they understand how to navigate that platform? Do they understand how to be in your class? Do they understand that the school says that they shouldn't be wagging their class and going to another class? Is what you're asking of them reasonable and timely? If you're asking them to learn a difficult quadratic equation in 15 minutes with the bell looming, is that a reasonable request? I'm thinking that's probably not as much of a problem for the audience of this call. Moving on. 7 is to understand the tools. There's a big pressure at the moment in many of our schools to get our kids through NCEA. Do we actually understand how NCEA works? Because NCEA is not, I think that when NCEA was designed, it was designed so that it could be malleable, that it could be localized, that you could use it as the tool that you wanted to use it for. In our worst case scenario, our kids have been disengaged from NCEA for 2-3 months. Teachers have had the longest term in the history of the universe. I think back to the World Cup and how difficult it was to have those long terms, but this has been like a 15-week term, and it's been relentless. Do we understand how to use the tool of NCEA? Or are we just making up the school rules for it? Like the school says we have to have 20 credits and these kids have to have 14 credits by the end of term 3. And if they don't have 14 credits, then someone's going to die. No one's going to die. We need to teach our kids and look after our kids a whole hell of a lot better than that. NCEA is just a tool. It is our fault if what we made out of it was a white box. And if your school has done that, then it's up to us to challenge that as teachers, as people from the inside. It's up to us to challenge the idea of how we're using NCEA. This can be a tool that can work for us. We can look at We can look at, if we went back to Mātauranga Māori and we looked at naturally occurring assessment, there's a lot of that stuff happening out there. How can we better utilise the tool that is NCEA rather than trying to push our kids into this box that we've made with it? Like, how can we rethink the way that we use it? And what is your capacity as like a classroom teacher or as an educator or as a leader in your school? What is your capacity to reshape what we've made with NCEA? How can we work smarter to serve our kids better and to care for our kids? 8 is that the story matters. I'm going to keep this one short, but this is from another talk that I give. But you know, we hear about stories about South Auckland particularly. We hear stories about our Māori and Pacific kids being at risk, being failures, being most likely to fail. But actually that story matters. I'm just going to read this bit. But you will hear stories of failure that's prevalent in the pigment of their skin or inherent in their postcode. It is your duty to tell a new story. Don't let that shit happen on your shift. So when teachers, there's poisonous corners of the staff room. We all know them. We've all sat in them. When the teachers or people or you are prompted to say things like, "Oh, that's Yone, he's no good," rethink that narrative. It's not okay to tell these stories, and it's our job as people who swore to a profession that was going to uphold and love on our young people. It is our duty to challenge that story every day in everything that we do. Sometimes it's a direct challenge to a colleague. Other times it's a reminder to that kid, I got your back, and you've got this, and we'll get through together. So restoring is an important part of what we do. 9 is to play to their strengths. To see, I think, you know, I'm an English teacher by training. And one of the biggest things that I did was go to a lot of rugby. Now, I'm not a rugby fan, but I attended probably 12 years of rugby to see my kids shine. I mean, it's so important to go and be a holistic part of their lives, to see them shine, to stop punishing them with school, and then to use those things to play to their strengths. Allow them to be the leaders and the orators, the sports people, the amazing, wonderful, wonderful humans that they are, and work out ways that we can use those tools, use that curriculum to serve them, not to kind of beat them around the head with anymore. I feel like we've had an education system that must be endured for a long time, and we need to stop punishing kids with school. It's like when the literacy person comes and takes the small child out of PE in order to beat them over the head with some remedial reading. And you're like, what are you doing? It's important. We just got to let them shine. So much shining. And then 10 is to dream big. We have to believe not only that things can change, but that we have the power to change them, and that we as individuals have the power to change them as well. We have the power to restore that narrative. We have the power to change the world of that one child in our classroom, those 30 children in our classroom. If you're a senior leader, or if you've got a leadership role, then you've got the opportunity to dream really big, to reshape the things that we made with that tool of NCEA. So that's kind of the final piece of advice that I have to offer today. And then the idea, with all of that, the idea that we have a moral responsibility to do this thing. Like, we can't sit back and lose another generation. For 30 years, we've been living with this colonial system that just punishes our kids for being brown. Right now, we have a changing population. A quarter of our kids are going to be Māori or Pacific. In the next few years, we need to change that up. They've got props on. It's beautiful, and they're back.
We've got our scholarship. We're celebrating our scholarship, Michelle. I am speechless. I could listen to you all day, and I hope that doesn't freak you out. I found you completely encapsulating as a speaker at our conference. Some huge questions and ideas and that's incredibly thought-provoking, and I wish I was going back into my classroom full-time next week to action some of this stuff. So thank you very much, Michelle. It's your passion is very, very evident, and your comfort certainly grew as you started talking about what you are very passionate about, and I think that's what I enjoyed so much about listening to you. And I can see from a few of the comments there that I'm not the only one who feels like this. So, like I said, I'm quite lost for words, actually.
We've been sitting through, and enjoying a lot of presentations over the last 1.5 days, and I think we were kind of getting aware of the time, that people were working to, just because we've been working in 45-minute slots, so the body was almost, working to that. We had no idea of the time because we were sitting the whole time listening really hard, and so that's just a testament to the way that you spoke and how you approached this presentation. And I think, the first thing that really struck a chord with me is that you asked that question, whose crisis are we prepared to react to? Which is the crisis that we really need to consider? And I think, even reminding us that we have the agency as individuals, Māori, non-Māori, Pasifika, non-Pasifika, that we can come together. And, the idea behind the treaty is for us to come as a partnership to work for the betterment of all of those in Aotearoa, and to do that knowing that we can make a difference. And I think it's encouraging. A little bit of work that I've done recently with the people involved in the review of the achievement standards is heartening around the connection to mātauranga Māori and the way that some of the previous assumptions are being challenged about the white box. I think that is perhaps one thing that I think is going to contribute to a change. But yeah, coming back to what it is that we can do as individuals. There's lots of people coming in with really thoughtful feedback to you and about your presentation. And I think, Michelle, so much of it, often people will have a quick sort of, hey, thanks very much. But there's real thoughtful stuff here where you've touched people and have made them stop and think. And yeah, I think reference to your TEDx talk, which we had a look at before we came on with you today. So you must be really proud of your whānau, and they obviously very proud of you. And I think just reiterating what Jill said, it was great. We could have sat and listened to this sort of thing for a long time. Now it's about what do we do with that? Are we just going to sit, or are we going to now put something into action and do our part?
Kia ora. Kia ora, thank you so much, and thank you so much for the kind words. Malo apito Tony, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, it's been a pleasure. I'm always happy to be contacted for anything, challenged about anything. Yeah, cool.
We'll hold that thought for our physical conference next year, Michelle.
Sure. Awesome.
Perfect.
So I guess, is there anything else? Does anyone want to pose a question for Michelle while we still have her in front of us? Reminder, just while people might be thinking and typing, because there is a small delay, that all of the presentations are recorded for you to come back into. If you have a ticket for this, you're able to review it and watch again. And absorb, for a second time what was presented, and that will be available, from about 24 hours after the presentation has been viewed live on our PENS website on the conference tab. So it's there. Don't think it was a one-off. You can go back and really bring up some of those questions for yourself for a later time too. Perfect. I think you've hit a chord with lots of people, Michelle, and they've got from you processing something to take away. No clarification of terminology or anything required, which you wondered earlier on. So, kia ora. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy the rest of your conference.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Thank you.
Take care.
See you later.
Okay.
Bye.